What is up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And today we are talking the Week 13 Saturday main slate. Before we get started, if you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like on the video. Those two things help a small channel like this immensely. So thank you very much if you've done that. If you have a request for later in the week, a game we don't hit today, please leave it in the comments. We'll get to everything that we don't get to here on Friday. Last thing, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. We'll be talking sides and totals in this video. All right, let's dive into the main slate, and there is no place else to start. Got to get to the main game of the week. USC takes on Oregon. De facto elimination game. I'm not sure if USC wins, they'll for sure get into the playoff, but if Oregon loses, they probably will be out. See where the committee would rank them hypothetically, but either way, this game is in Oregon, and we have a 10-point spread in favor of the Ducks. Maybe you could find a trailing 9.5 at this point. The total is 59.5. So to get here, good schedule for USC. Couple blips on the radar. To Illinois, they lose by 2 points in a game that arguably should have been worse. Post-game win expectancy was 27%. That game had a bunch of weird plays. Illinois had a fumble right at the goal line. One of those plays where you're trying to fight for the extra yardage and break the plane, but it ends up being USC's ball when it's punched out. They also had another one, like they had a couple plays right at the goal line that Illinois messed up in that game. USC also got crushed by Notre Dame in a game that was probably a little closer than it should have been as well. That was a 10-point loss. Their marquee wins include Iowa, a game where they had a 45% post-game win expectancy, Nebraska, and Michigan. Basically, the story on USC has been, if you have trench advantages, you can beat this USC team. Oregon, meanwhile, has had an excellent season. Their lone loss coming to Indiana by 10 points. They were soundly defeated in that game. Their marquee wins include Iowa as well. That was a 2-point win. Very gross game with the elements, but they end up with a 96% post-game win expectancy. They also hold the win over Penn State in overtime. Now, that was a win that hasn't aged well, but Penn State was at full strength in the game. Since then, they've lost their quarterback, and it's been a disaster, fired their coach and whatnot. Overall, pretty good body of work for Oregon. Injuries are going to be a very big key in this game. For USC, their last game was costly. Elijah Page, their best offensive lineman, went down, and they lost their two best defensive backs, both safeties, Bishop Fitzgerald and Kamari Ramsey. Don't know if they're going to play yet in this game. They also don't have Eli Sanders at running back. They may get some reinforcements with Waymon Jordan. He didn't warm up, but he was listed questionable ahead of the game, so he's getting closer. For Oregon, they've been down their top three receivers for a bit now. DeCorian Moore's missed the last two games. Gary Bryant missed the last game. He got injured in the game prior, very, very early on. And Evan Stewart hasn't played all season long after that torn patellar in the spring, but it looks like he maybe will return in this game or sometime soon. Tion Gray also didn't play at defensive tackle. When we look at the quarterbacks in this game, two elite players. We'll start with USC's offense facing Oregon's defense. Jaden Maeva has had an excellent season. 66% completion percentage, 9.4 yards per attempt. He has 23 big-time throws, only 12 turnover-worthy plays, and 8 sacks. This is an excellent run-out for him, and it makes sense when you look at who he's throwing to and who he has in the backfield. We mentioned losing Waymon Jordan and Eli Sanders. They have not skipped a beat with King Miller. This guy already has 719 yards, 7.3 yards per carry. He barely played in the first 6 games. Just incredible performance individually for him. They're up to 14th in rushing, and we knew they were going to be elite in the receiving game. Mekhi Lemon's already over 1,000 yards. Jacoby Lane is an excellent complement to him, a big-bodied red zone weapon. And Lake McCree is a pretty good tight end when they need to use him and move the sticks. The receiving options, the run game is excellent to help Maeva. And the O-line has been okay. They've battled injuries this year. Killian O'Connor missed a stretch. Page already got hurt once. He's hurt again. They're 95th in both pass blocking and run blocking. We got to have Page in this game. If Page is out, this could be a really big mismatch in favor of Oregon, because you don't have a lot of options to come in and replace him. And they're already struggling at guard. They have one of the worst guard duos in the Big Ten. So you are reliant on your center, O'Connor. You need both tackles playing in this game to help those issues inside. It's going to be tough if he doesn't play. Oregon has an excellent defensive line. This team is 8th in total defense, and they're actually led by their coverage unit. The only quarterbacks that have really gotten them at any point this season, I guess Mark Gajewski, technically 7.7 yards per attempt. He's the only one above 7. And then on the ground, the only one above 4 is Northwestern. So it's been a good showing for this defense. Not the toughest schedule, but still. The edges in this room, I think, are even a little underrated with Mateo Uagalele and Tatum Teote. This is a great duo. They've been excellent in run defense, still expecting a little more pass rushing. If Page doesn't play in this game, you could see these guys eat. They've been good inside. Oregon's the first team to really get a ceiling out of Bear Alexander. Amari Washington's been solid too. Good linebacking duo in Bryce Betcher and Jerry Mixon. And the secondary is currently second in the country. Opposing quarterbacks face definitely play a role. It's not been the toughest schedule, but still. Brandon Finney, Jaden Kennedy, Dylan Thieneman, and Aaron Flowers are all very good. It's just one spot. They're kind of rotating. Overall, it's an excellent defense, and this team's going to have their handful, USC that is, especially if the offensive lineman can't play. Oregon has a lot of advantages in this game, and they hold the trench advantage with this defensive line. Meanwhile, on the other side, Dante Moore, an excellent season as well. He has a 73% completion percentage, 8.6 yards per attempt, 19 big-time throws, only 6 turnover-worthy plays, and only 6 sacks. The offensive line for Oregon has excelled. First in pass blocking, 16th in run blocking. They have a lot of elite players. Pregnon, Lulu, Harkey, World. It's really one spot that you could poke a hole in if you wanted to, and that is still an above-average spot. That paves the way for an excellent running game. So far this season, Noah Whittington's at 8.2 yards per carry. Jordan Davidson's at 7. De'Aaron Hill is at 8.7. Now, the offensive line is creating a lot of yards before contact. However, it is the perfect blend these running backs also creating when they have the ball individually. This is the biggest mismatch in the entire game. Not to mention, they're going to need it. The receivers, depending on who is back in this game, are just limited right now. Let's assume, and we don't know this, let's assume DeCorian Moore, Gary Bryant, and Evan Stewart all can't play in this game. You need Kenyon Sadiq, who is electric, to be your number one option. He plays at tight end. He does create some mismatches because of the way they use him, but it gets thin quick. They use Jamari Johnson a lot as the second tight end in 12 personnel packages. Malik Benson becomes the wide receiver one in this situation. I would not be surprised to see one of DeCorian Moore, Gary Bryant, Evan Stewart play, if not multiple. So this could be better than we even expect. We'll have to see what goes on with the pregame report. Either way, the biggest advantage comes in the trenches, in the run game. USC plays excellent defense, but they are by far weaker up front. 120th in run defense. They actually have some decent pass rushers in Anthony Lucas and Cameron Crawford, but the interior is just so weak. Devin Tompkins, Jide Abasiri, some of these players are young, like Abasiri is a young 4-star. Linebacking room has Eric Gentry, but not much else. They live and die by this secondary, and even that has been chipped away slowly. I don't know how healthy Fitzgerald and Ramsey are going to be. They tried to stuff the box against Iowa. They barely played any nickel. It still didn't work. Iowa got in their own way. They still average above 5 yards per carry. It's going to be a tough runoff for USC in this game. We need to see how the injuries shake out, but I think there's more downside for USC than Oregon. We took a 9.5. You still should be able to find this if you really hunt for it. 10, I think, would be okay. Depending on where you live, you may have to take that number. But I would wait on the 9.5 if at all possible in this game. But we're going to back the Ducks at home in a tough environment for USC. BYU Cincinnati. This is also an elimination game for BYU because of some tiebreaker scenarios. Laying that out quick. BYU wins, they are going to play Texas Tech unless there's chaos in the Big 12 championship. If they lose, it opens the door for Utah, and it would make the road for BYU much tougher. They would need some help. So BYU needs to win this game. They are a 2.5-point favorite in a game with a 54.5 total. To get here, BYU has played an incredibly easy schedule, and you saw them kind of disrespected, according to some, in the playoff rankings. If they don't win the championship, they would probably be on the outside losing in if chalk holds. And that's because they decided to play Portland State, Stanford, East Carolina in their non-con on top of a very weak Big 12 schedule. When they've played good teams, they've mostly taken care of business. They had the blowout loss to Texas Tech, which could have been worse if Texas Tech punched in a few of their field goals, turned those into touchdowns rather than 3. But they also beat Utah. That was a very back and forth game. Utah did themselves no favors. They had a turnover on down at the BYU 12. They had a turnover on down at the BYU 28, off the punt. Another turnover on down at the BYU 8-yard line. Threw an interception at their own 37, giving BYU a direct touchdown. There were a lot of ways Utah could have won that game. Not to mention they had 12 penalties, and they still only lost by 3 doing all of that. Most recently, we did see this BYU team rebound from the Texas Tech loss and beat the snot out of TCU, which was a good one. I know a lot of people were on TCU. I managed to avoid it, was very close to betting TCU, so dodged a bullet. Cincinnati, meanwhile, has not gotten out of their own way. They lost to Nebraska on opening day with a 63% post-game win expectancy, and they did themselves in their last 2 games, getting blown out by Utah and then losing to Arizona by 6 points in the game where they finished with a 20% post-game win expectancy, rightful loss there. Best win for Cincinnati? Probably Baylor or Iowa State. It's not been a good slate of wins for them. Very weak teams, and they've lost to all the teams that are on paper better than them. Injuries in this game. Waylon Lapuaho is injured on the BYU offensive line. I think he's going to play here, as well as Evan Pryor for Cincinnati at running back and Caleb Goody. They should all be at full strength, so not an injury game. Let's start with BYU's offense. A little limited. They're using Bear Bachmeier a lot on the ground. As a passer, he has a 63% completion percentage, 7.9 yards per attempt, 12 big-time throws, 10 turnover-worthy plays. He's only taken 10 sacks, which is very good. We know the mobility is there for Bachmeier. The wide receivers have a 9.5% drop rate. And on that, I wish the skill position players were a little bit better or just maybe reconfigured slightly. I have no issues with LJ Martin in the run game. They need him on every single down. 5.6 yards per carry, has 21 catches. He's an elite lead back. Bachmeier is also very good on the ground himself, so I like the run game. The receivers, I think up front, Chase Roberts and Parker Kingston are a good duo. Both of them are above 600 yards. Roberts is above 700. And you actually have a decent receiving option at tight end in Carson Ryan. I just don't know what they're trying to do at wide receiver 3. JoJo Phillips was the initial wide receiver 3. He gets hurt. He's back now. They immediately put him on the field for a full-time role, and he's been horrible. The worst receiver on the team. He's been worse than Tiger Bachmeier. Whoever you want to put out there has been better than JoJo Phillips. He has 13 targets, and he has 3 drops. Now, maybe this changes. It's a small sample. He's a talented player, but they need to correct that quickly. He is costing them. Did that against Texas Tech. The offensive line here is good. The infrastructure is solid for BYU. 31st in pass blocking, 9th in run blocking. Offensive line's above average across the board. One weird thing they're doing, they still rotate both guards, which doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I wish they would just solidify that, but this is a deep unit, so if there's an injury on the interior especially, they should be able to overcome it. The only time the offense is limited is when they play good defenses that force them into clear pass game scripts like we saw against Texas Tech. Very few teams have been able to achieve that. Can Cincinnati's defense stop this team? I don't know. They're shockingly good in run defense, but horrible at rushing the passer, which is weird considering they're playing that 3-front defensive line. They've been beat at times in both the run game and the pass game. Noah Fafita got them last week. Jalen Daniels got them before for 15.9 yards per attempt. They've done a pretty good job on the ground. The only teams above 5 yards per carry were Utah and Kansas, who have decent run games. Dante Corleone is excellent inside. He's been banged up this year. Jalen Hunt's been good on the edge, too. Those are the only quality defensive linemen. But fortunately for them, they have maybe the best linebacking room in this conference. Texas Tech is definitely something to say about that. But Jay Golday, he's going to get drafted. He's been elite. The secondary is up and down. They're 57th in coverage. Their best players are Logan Wilson and Antoine Peak, and they still haven't been able to find a role for Antoine Peak, like a full-time role, which is a bit concerning to me. The major question I have in this matchup is if Cincinnati were to get ahead, is BYU still equipped to play from behind? The only time we've seen them really do that this year, they could not move the ball. So I don't think there's a definitive edge. If you force me to pick, I would say BYU's offense scores enough points. On the Cincinnati side, we just saw Brendan Sorsby play his worst game. He only has 5 turnover-worthy plays this year, but 2 of them came against Arizona, and they were costly. Cost them the game. 59% completion percentage, 8.3 yards per attempt. He has 20 big-time throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays, and he's only taken 3 sacks. The negative plays just haven't been there, which that's how they won games. Their team is not good enough if he's going to have a couple of these, as we saw against Arizona. The offensive line is pretty good for this team. They have 4 very strong players. Best ones are Tangsdahl and Tayo, but they have one really, really bad player. It's left tackle DeAndre Buford. They don't have an answer there. Otherwise, as a whole, the offensive line comes in quality unit. Overall, the skill players are decent too, and you should see these get better. So I expect them at full capacity to achieve what we've seen: 25th in receiving, 19th in rushing. Tawi Walker's been solid in the place of Evan Pryor, but getting Pryor back at 7.2 yards per carry is going to help this unit, just give them more options. Swersby's involved on the ground as well. You do return Caleb Goody in this game. Presumably that would give you Cyrus Allen, Jeff Caldwell, Goody, and then tight end Joe Royer. That's a solid group of pass catchers. Overall, the offense should be absolutely fine. And I do have concerns with BYU's defense. The schedule's been weak for this team. No way around that. 42nd in total defense, but a couple of the good signal callers have definitely got them. Rocco Becht at 8.6, Josh Hoover 8.0. That's their yards per attempt. The only reason I hesitate, Devin Dampier and Baron Morton were held below 7 yards per attempt. So a little bit of good with the bad. In the run game, this is probably the best way to beat this team. Arizona, Utah, and Iowa State all over 5 yards per carry. Interestingly, again, Texas Tech and TCU below 3.5 yards per carry. So it's kind of, they've been up and down, I think is the best way to put it. They're going to use a 6-man defensive line rotation. It's not the best unit. The only one who's definitively above average is John Taomopao, defensive tackle. Linebackers are great. Isaiah Glasker's been a little up and down. The best units, their secondary with Tanner Wall, Faletau, Satuala, and Evan Johnson. They're the best players in the entire defense. So I do think Cincinnati can move the ball on this team. They're one of the better offenses BYU has faced this year, which points me towards an over. Through the breakdown, we've come back to both offenses having success in this game. Pace should be around average as long as BYU doesn't slow it to a crawl. They're below average in pace, but Cincinnati is definitively above average, so expecting somewhat neutral there. We took this at over 53.5, obviously looking for the best number. I don't think you're rushing to the window at 54. It might come back down. So I think this one's worth waiting and seeing, but we're going to be on the over in this game with both offenses having hypothetical advantages over the defenses. Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, another huge game in the ACC, which has almost definitively become a one-bid league based on what the playoff committee put out this week. Pittsburgh's still battling for a chance to make the playoff, given a potential title berth. We know they weren't treating Notre Dame seriously, and that's the outcome they got, losing 37-15. They have not played a good schedule this year. On top of Notre Dame, they have a loss to West Virginia, which is not aged well whatsoever, as well as Louisville. They actually had a 52% postgame win expectancy against Louisville. Their marquee win is against Florida State, who's fighting for a bowl. So the strength of schedule is not doing Pittsburgh any favors. Georgia Tech is in a similar boat. They've had a lot of very close calls. They did lose one to NC State, which is not a pretty loss. They just beat Boston College by 2 points. Now 60% postgame win expectancy, rightful win, but you don't want to be allowing 34 points to a winless ACC team, winless in conference. They also have a win over Wake Forest with a 22% postgame win expectancy, a win over Clemson with a 32% postgame win expectancy. The bottom line for Georgia Tech is this team's been living dangerously. Now in this game, they're facing a very banged up Pitt team who just lost Desmond Reed again. I would be surprised if we see him in this game. It did not look like a good injury. I'm no doctor, so wait for the official reports. They've been without one of their better O-linemen, Keith Govea, for a while. On defense, a lot of injuries. Sean Fitzsimmons didn't play in their last game at DT. Nick James is banged up. They haven't had their best defensive back, Cruz Brookins, in a while. Georgia Tech is really healthy, man. They had their bye, a late bye, before we just saw them. So I think they're probably going to be mostly healthy. Like, they got Rutherford back. I didn't see anyone get additionally banged up. At quarterback, let's start with Pitt's offense. It's been really up and down. They benched Eli Holstein early in the year. It's kind of funny to me that they got almost the identical numbers from freshman Mason Heinstl since he took over for Holstein. Decent completion at 61%, 7.7 yards per attempt, 12 big-time throws, 14 turnover-worthy plays, 6 interceptions, 19 sacks. It's like basically the exact same thing you were getting with Holstein. So the offense hasn't really changed. They're explosive at times, and then they get in their own way with the turnovers and negative plays. The offensive line has taken on water. A lot of guys hurt. The best player is Ryan Baer at right tackle. The worst player is Kendall Stanley at left tackle. Rest of the group is pretty average. They got annihilated by Notre Dame, over a 50% pressure rate. I will say this has room to get worse. The opposing defensive lines to have faced this O-line are very weak. So if you want to poke a hole in the strength of schedule and the efficiency numbers, you could. The skill position players are taking on water too. Jakarian Turner has taken over for Desmond Reed. He's been fine. It's just a downgrade. Reed's one of the most dynamic, especially pass catching backs in the country. When you don't have him, you're just limited. Kenny Johnson, Raphael Williams are okay. They form a decent wide receiver tandem, but what else do you have? Occasionally you get a big play from Kataris Hicks, but this unit is 76th in receiving efficiency. You're right on average. It's just not a formidable offense, and when you add in the turnovers, it's tough. You're facing a Georgia Tech defense, however, that's 114th, and man, has this team been bad. You just allow 34 points to Boston College. So where does this unit go? Right now, they are 82nd in run defense, 104th in coverage, 113th in pass rush. They've allowed 8.5 yards per attempt in 4 of their last 5 games through the air. They've allowed 6.5 yards per carry in each of their last 3. They're using a 10-man defensive line rotation with one good player, Jordan Vandenberg. They have not had a good grip on their efficiency metrics for these players either. The leading snap getter on the edge is AJ Hoffler. He's been horrible. The defensive coordinator, the new hire, has not worked out. Kyle Efford and EJ Lightsey are okay at linebacker. They're very limited, especially in coverage. They did get back their best defensive back from injury, Amari Harvey, but he's not enough to fix all the coverage issues. I mean, I think Pitt scored in this game. Is it just enough to overcome Georgia Tech on offense? And it cannot be overstated how much Haynes King does for this team. If you were just doing an MVP, a true MVP, who is the most valuable player to their team, Haynes King, he's got to be in the top 3. It's him, it's Pavia, I don't know who else, but as far as just who means the most to wins and losses for their team, Haynes King's got to be on the list. 72% completion percentage, 8.8 yards per attempt. He has 10 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays on the year. How do you get 2 interceptions on 0 turnover-worthy plays? Your receivers tip passes in the air. 8 sacks? This is incredible. And he does so much on the ground for this team. He's their leading rusher, 807 yards. Now, they use a tandem at running back, which was not expected coming in the year. Malachi Hosley has been icing Jamal Haynes, especially on the ground, which makes sense. 7.7 yards per carry to Haynes at 4.6. Haynes is still excellent in the receiving game, so he's been an efficient third down back, but that's a good problem to have. I like the receiving core. Eric Rivers, Malik Rutherford's healthy now. Isaiah Canyon's been fine, and their freshman Jordan Allen has been, when they need him, he's been good. The offensive line, 55th in pass blocking, 43rd in run blocking. Their center's the weakest link, but the rest of the group is very good. Keelan Rutledge leads them. They can score, and they don't have negative plays. On defense, Pitt is 17th, 5th in run defense, 30th in coverage. I think you could poke a lot of holes in this. They're mainly just driven by schedule. Tommy Castellanos did get them for 10.7 yards per attempt. The defense held CJ Carr and CJ Bailey in check, but I think that was more of we're just going to run on this team. When you look at what Notre Dame did and NC State did, 4.9 yards per carry for Notre Dame, 8.5 for NC State. A lot of this is they've played a lot of very, very bad offenses. So when you look at the personnel, the interior defensive line is solid, but again, Fitzsimmons was hurt. They've taken on a little water there. The edge group is horrible. Rasheem Biles and Braylon Lovelace, they're pretty good at linebacker. They do grade out well. The secondary has been kind of a mess. They're rotating a lot of guys, and it makes sense when you lose Cruz Brookins, your best defensive back on paper. The best way to beat this team's probably over the top. Georgia Tech can score via the pass or the run if they want to. Very efficient offense. We're tentatively leaning towards Georgia Tech here, especially with, I think, Pitt's best player getting hurt. That would be running back Desmond Reed. We'll see on this. I'm not 100% where the line goes. It's been parked at 2.5 for a while, so we've stayed away to this point. If it threatens 3, I'll probably take Georgia Tech. Otherwise, going to wait and see if Pitt takes some money and maybe end up on a Georgia Tech side, but pretty close to taking this one. We'll leave it as a lean for now. Louisville takes on SMU. A good game in the ACC, probably two teams on the outside looking at SMU as a shot. It would require some chaos to get there to the title game. That is Louisville. Pretty much dead after they dropped their last two games. You lose to Cal in overtime. You lose to Clemson in a game where you had an 87% post-game win expectancy, nearly double them up in yards. The reason you lose, you got 10 penalties. You fumble on your own 21. You missed 2 field goals. You gave Clemson a lot of points in the game. You couldn't lose. Now, they also had a loss to Virginia early in the season with a 90% post-game win expectancy. Even with the Miami win, it's kind of been a very rough run out for Louisville. Just lost a couple games that they should have won. On the other side, SMU loses to Baylor and TCU, 2 non-con games, which is how you end up still threatening for the conference. Meanwhile, their lone conference loss comes to Wake Forest by 1 point. Very disgusting game full of turnovers. It also was a rightful loss, 38% post-game win expectancy. This team also beat Miami. They beat Clemson, so they've handled 2 of the better teams in this conference at least. So to get here, injury-wise, let's look at those. Isaac Brown's been banged up for Louisville, hurts their run game. SMU's had a few more, but they just had a bye. We're expecting some of these players back. Chris Johnson, Jr. at running back, Logan Parr on the offensive line, Cameron Robertson, edge, Marcellus Barnes, defensive back, Jalen Davis, Robinson, defensive back, and Justin Medlock. He probably won't be back. He's a linebacker. So should be healthier after they had the late season bye. For quarterback, Miller Moss is disappointed, taking over for Tyler Shuck. 64% completion, 6.9 yards per attempt, 10 big-time throws, 16 turnover-worthy plays, 19 sacks. They're running quick game, a lot of quick game. Their offensive line is just so limited. They don't have much choice. So that's how you get a 6.9 yards per attempt, reliant a lot on yards after the catch from Chris Bell. But that offensive line's 100th in pass blocking, 64th in run blocking. One solid player in Lance Robinson. A couple of slightly above average players in Rasheed Miller and Pete Niagara, but Trevante Sylvester's been atrocious. And I think the offensive scheme has sort of masked some of their problems using a lot of that quick game. They lost 4 offensive linemen coming into the year, and they didn't do a ton to replace them. It's a lot of low-level guys transferring up, which this was the expectation. And then you lose Isaac Brown, 8.6 yards per carry. He was a demon yards after contact per attempt, forced missed tackles. Kewan Brown's been fine, 7.3 yards per carry, but they're still trying to make the Duke Watson thing work. He's had a brutal season, 2.8 yards per carry. He did get hurt. I think he's just trying to play through it. And at receiver, you have 2 good players, Chris Bell and Colin Lacey. No one else is competent. So it's a very limited offense. I can't believe Miami found a way to lose to this team because they don't have a lot of good players offensively. If you can stop their run game and then put extra resources, dedicate them to Chris Bell, how does Louisville beat you other than their scheme is excellent? SMU is in a good defense, and they've been improving lately. 23rd in total defense, 2nd against the run, 44th in coverage. The pass defense was brutal to begin the year, and it didn't really make sense. 8.8 yards per attempt to Sawyer Robertson, 9.5 to Josh Hoover. Both of them have regressed since this game. And it was kind of their safeties like Nakwobia and Moses. They didn't live up to expectation. They've been a lot better recently, and Deuce Harmon at corner has been excellent for this team. So seeing them stiffen has been positive. Up front, they were always good. Their edges are excellent with Cameron Robertson, Isaiah Smith. Again, Robertson should be back. Jaffrey Emba and Terry Webb at defensive tackle. Linebackers have also gotten healthier. That was an injured position to begin the year. So far, Kilgore, Brandon Booker, they've been decent to above average. So that's a tough defense to score on, especially with the defensive line being the strength. That should give this Louisville offensive line problems. And then offensively, the biggest concern has been the regression of Kevin Jennings. It's been a little better of late. I know he was banged up. He could barely move in a couple contests. Completion percentage sits at 65%, 8 yards per attempt, 19 big-time throws, 12 turnover-worthy plays, and they've been converting a lot of those. 9 interceptions. 17 sacks is decent, not good, not bad. The pass catchers do have an 8.5% drop rate, which would help Jennings' stats, honestly. Their run game is pretty good. I think largely because of their offensive line. They have a very good unit, especially that right side man starting with their center, Bates moving to Addison Nichols and PJ Williams. That's a solid unit. And they should get back Parr from injury. Only Savion Bird's been a problem. They have the ability to replace him. I don't know why they haven't. And that's helped them because the running backs individually have not done a lot. TJ Harden, he leads this attack. Derek McFalls played a little more recently, offers them some juice, but they're 126th in just pure rushing efficiency. That is a stat that tries to isolate the running backs from the offensive line using yards after contact, force missed tackles. They're not doing a lot of that stuff. So the offensive line being good has provided them some semblance of a run game. The receiving game has been fine. Jordan Hudson, Romello Brinson, Ymir Knight, Jalen Cooper, the freshman when they need him. They've benched RJ Maryland, which is a big surprise. They're not using him at all. They're sort of limited. It's not the same offensive attack we saw last year. On defense, Louisville is excellent, especially up front. They're a very good pass rushing team. They've been beaten a couple times by QBs. Carson Beck had a reasonable game outside of the interception, 7.7 yards per attempt. Eli Holstein got him for 8.1. Pretty good against the run, which makes sense. Their defensive line is fierce. Did a great job in the portal, bringing in Clev Lubin from Coastal, Wesley Bailey from Rutgers. Rene Congo was already in the building. They also got back Stanquan Clark at linebacker to join TJ Quinn and TJ Capers. Secondary is very good across the board. It's definitely not easy to score on Louisville. Overall, in this game, I think there are more advantages for SMU, most of them slight. QB, probably SMU. Defense, I would give SMU with the total package. It's very close, though. I could see the argument for Louisville as well with their edge rushing group and their defensive line. Playing at home with a few edges, we lean SMU's direction. I don't think we're going to get to this one and bring it to the window. Certainly not if it crawls to 3, which SMU's taken a little bit of money. Honestly, you could point me towards an under with both defenses as well. Kind of scary given the history of Louisville and SMU, especially with SMU's pace. But that's where we lean. Going to be a fun game, probably one we just end up watching. Tennessee, Florida. SEC clash. Tennessee is taking some money. They're -4. Total is 57 over Florida. Very tough place to play. But to get here, Tennessee's just dropped a couple really important games. They lose to Oklahoma. They have a loss to Alabama and a loss to Georgia with a 76% post-game win expectancy. You flip that outcome, Tennessee's in the mix. Unfortunately, they're firmly out of the playoff race at this point. Florida's been a mess this year, fired their coach. They've played competitively in a lot of contests. They lose to Georgia by 4. They lose to Ole Miss by 10. Beat Mississippi State, too. That's kind of their last 4 games. Just a lost season for Florida at this point. For injuries, Tennessee did take on some water. The last time we saw them, they played New Mexico State, so it's hard to evaluate precaution versus actual injury. Miles Kitzelman got hurt in the game. Wendell Moe got hurt in the game, tight end and offensive lineman. They didn't play Joshua Josephs or Jordan Ross, edge rushers. Arian Carter's been banged up at linebacker. Defensive back, probably not getting any healthier. Ricky Gibson's out for the year. Jermod McCoy, I continue to doubt whether we see him this season. And Boo Carter now left the team. But it's not like Florida's much better. Dallas Wilson, Eugene Wilson, and Tank Hawkins are not playing. Vernell Brown was expected to play, warmed up, did not play. And they've been without Dejon Johnson on defense in the backfield and Caleb Banks, the defensive tackle, for a while. Joey Aguilar has been excellent for Tennessee. 66% completion, 9.2 yards per attempt, 19 big-time throws, 10 turnover-worthy plays, only 11 sacks. One of the main problems with Tennessee is their receivers have 26 drops. That's 11% of Aguilar's on-target passes. His stats could be even better. And even with the drops, this unit still comes in pretty efficient. They're 18th in receiving efficiency, 24th in rushing. You get 6.5 yards per carry out of Deshaun Bishop. He's been slowly taking on more work over Star Thomas and Peyton Lewis. They run 3 wide receivers, and that's it. They're very thin, and fortunately, they've stayed healthy. Brazel's over 800 yards. Staley's over 700. Matthews is over 600. This is a quality receiving room as long as they don't take on any water, and they haven't. The offensive line's impressed me. They've gotten better throughout the year as well. Currently 17th in pass blocking, 66th in run blocking. Getting David Sanders, their 5-star freshman, has really helped them. He bookends at one side, and Lance Hurd, one of the worst tackles in the country last year, has really developed. They've gotten more out of him than I ever expected. Their interior is average to above average in most areas. It's a good offensive line for Tennessee and an overall awesome offense. Florida's defense has definitely shown cracks through most of the games this year. They've allowed at least, they've allowed 7.3 yards per attempt in 6 straight games or more. They've allowed 8.6 or better in 4 of their last 6. They've been crushed by QBs. Now, the defensive backfield has been banged up at times. They've gotten healthier. But the run defense, although it's been a little better, they just allowed 4.9 yards per carry to Ole Miss. Their run defense is decent. They've kind of extended this rotation. Tyreek Sapp has been good on the edge. I mean, the one thing I'll say about this, one, I thought they'd be better rushing the passer. Their edge group has not been able to do that, Sapp being a culprit. They've still played good run defense, but I think the story with Florida's defense in a lot of positions is they've been good, but they have not lived up to expectation, and it's not been good enough to beat a lot of SEC teams. Linebackers kind of the same. Miles Graham's been solid. They don't have much else. The secondary is just severely limited outside of Devin Moore and Bryce Thornton right now with the injuries they've sustained. Best way to beat this team is throw the ball over the top, which Joey Aguilar and company, they are firmly capable of doing. DJ Lagway, tough go for him this season. He had a decent game last time out, 63% completion on the season, 6.7 yards per attempt. He's 11 big-time throws, 19 turnover-worthy plays. He's taken 18 sacks, just hasn't been pretty with the negative plays. Now their skill position players are as hurt as they've ever been. We might be looking at J. Michael Sturdivant leading this team at receiver. That is a huge problem for them. Getting looks at Aiden Mazzell, TJ Abrams. Hopefully the young guys got some juice. They're not even the young guys we expected to play like Vernell Brown and Dallas Wilson. So it's tough out there in the receiving game because of injury. It's also gotten tougher for Jaden Ball. I think they're just asking him to do too much. He has 31 catches, 808 yards, but the efficiency's dropped. They've been hurt at running back too, like no Jacoby Jackson. The offensive line, also kind of the story with this team. Good, but still a little below what we expected. Jake Slaughter and Austin Barber lead this unit, center and left tackle there. Caden Jones has been a real problem at right tackle. They still come in 48th in pass blocking, 21st in run blocking. Believe it or not, that's still a little worse than last year, given the same personnel. Tennessee's defense, they're going to be beat over the top in some games. You've now seen Carson Beck, Taylon Green, Ty Simpson, Cutter Boley, all above 8.3 yards per attempt or more. A couple teams have gotten them on the ground, fewer than through the air. Arkansas and Oklahoma were at 5.5 yards per carry. The defensive line is the best part of their team. Joshua Josephs, Tyree Rest, Jordan Ross are excellent on the edge. Dominic Bailey's good inside. Edwin Spillman is good at linebacker. They don't have a lot else. The secondary is just limited. I still think it's a pretty good unit. I've been impressed what they've been able to coax out of Colton Hood, Ty Redmond, Andries Farouk, and Jalen McMurray. Just you don't have Ricky Gibson or Jermon McCoy. Now you lose Boo Carter, who kind of played in a rotational role for this team. It's a pretty good secondary. I will give them that. I think the way to beat this team is throw it over the top, but I don't know if Florida has enough juice to take advantage of this unit, to be honest with you. And I also don't know if they can do it before this pass rush gets to Lagway, who's had a lot of problems with mobility. I'm kicking myself for not taking a 3 at open. It doesn't look like this is going to move far beyond 4, so kind of holding out hope it goes to a 3.5 or a 3 again. I think that's very unlikely, but we're just going to wait and see. I'll likely end up on a Tennessee side here. The main hesitation is location. Tough place to play. Washington State, James Madison. This is one we did took it early in the week at a 12.5. It hasn't moved far, and I still think the 13.5 is worthwhile. JMU is playing Washington State, who's had a really weird season. I mean, this team lost to Oregon State. They obviously lost to, like, that is an inexcusable loss. But outside of that, they played Virginia to 2, Ole Miss to 3. Like, I just don't have a lot of answers to how that's possible. They beat Idaho by 3 points, but then they crushed San Diego State. This team is kind of the ultimate lose to who you should beat, and then vice versa. I mean, this team got blown out by North Texas. I don't know, man. The strength of schedule, the results on the schedule are very, very weird. Somehow they're getting up for teams that are very good and teams they should be clearly losing to, but then they're also playing really close against bad teams. So that maybe that suggests that they should cover the spread against James Madison, but we'll get into the personnel. I don't buy this. I think it's more luck than anything else. For JMU, it's been an excellent season. They've handled business every step of the way, including a cover against Louisville back in week 2. Barely, but they did it. Otherwise, they've won most games by blowout. The closest one and probably the biggest question, Georgia State, they win by 7. I don't know. Penalties kind of ruined that game. Louisiana, they won by 10. It was a very, very interesting game. A lot of penalties for JMU. I thought their coach was going to explode. They also had 3 turnovers, a couple dumb errors. Like, Louisiana can't really throw the ball, and they hit one deep shot where a defender fell down. It was a bomb that caused them to score. Not reading too much into that. For injuries, Washington State's Cale Reeder at safety, Max Balloon, and Mike Sanjo on the defensive line. JMU's healthy. It's how they've gotten here. They've had a very good run out with injuries. Zevi Eckhouse will quarterback Washington State. He's had a pretty good season considering they, for whatever reason, didn't play him in the beginning of the year. 64% completion, 6.8 yards per attempt. He's taken 16 sacks and thrown 8 picks. He's more in like the game manager role. He runs a little bit, but this team has a really bad rushing efficiency number. They're 107th. Kirby Voorhees is at 4.5 yards per carry, and he's the only running back that's even halfway decent. Eckhouse is at 3.0 yards per carry, which helps kind of. They've been a little better throwing the ball. Meredith is above 500 yards, nearly 600. Tony Freeman's at 392. They're the only 2 receivers above 200 receiving yards. They have a pretty balanced pass-to-run ratio. The offense has just really struggled, and part of the problem is their line is a huge liability. 130th in pass blocking, 102nd in run blocking. 2 above-average starters. Your center, Brock Dew, and Christian Hilborn at guard. The right side is horrible, man. Like, this unit is a disaster. And you're facing a good Sun Belt defense that's already been tested by Louisville, played some good teams. They're 5th in total defense, 18th against the run, 2nd in coverage. The only QBs with any sort of success were Colton Joseph and Lunch Winfield. We already talked about how Winfield got there. You have a defender slipping on the field, so it's more of a blip on the radar than Lunch Winfield doing anything himself. The only team above 3.8 yards per carry was Marshall. The D-line runs the rotation, and unlike a lot of teams, I've got no problem with anyone they use. Everyone in this rotation is good. Amar Thomas leads them on the edge. Linebackers, Trent Hendrick, Gannon Weathersby, solid. Elite secondary, 2nd in coverage efficiency, led by DJ Barksdale and Jacob Thomas. I don't know how you're scoring on this team. Washington State already has a really bad offense. Now you're playing an excellent defense. Conversely, Alonzo Barnett had some problems throwing the ball early in the season. They've largely improved. 61.5% completion percentage, 8.1 yards per attempt. He's up to 12 big-time throws, 7 turnover-worthy plays, only 12 sacks. Offensive line for this team is excellent. Every single starter is above average. Best guy, Pat McMurtry. They don't have a weak link, man. Like, not one player really stands out as a weak link. It's a good offensive line. I've been surprised by the skill players. Wayne Knight's up to 6.2 yards per carry. They're going to run some kind of combination with him, but he'll lead the committee. Excellent. He's their 2nd leading receiver. And their receivers aren't bad. Landon Ellis is above 500 yards. This skill position group has really surprised me considering almost everyone leaves every year via transfer. So props to James Madison. They can really move the ball and score on you. And Washington State's defense is 75th. They've done a decent job against some good opposing quarterbacks. Like Chandler Morris, 7.2 yards per attempt. Trinidad Chambliss, 8.7. Damon Williams was at 15.7. So if they're good, they can definitely beat you. They haven't played a good QB in a month either. If you want to look at the player personnel, I think the best player is probably Isaac Terrell on the edge. The interior is really weak for this team. You can run the ball, and James Madison will oblige. Linebacker is even more concerning than the interior with like Parker McKenna. The secondary is decent with Colby Humphrey, Tucker Large, and Jamori Colston, but the rest of this group is pretty bad. They continue to start Cale Reeder, who's been an atrocious player for them. They actually improved when he was hurt. I know he's going to play in this game, I think at least. We show a lot of value on James Madison. I'm not really looking to play this at 14 or beyond, so getting a 13.5 I think is important. That's the number now, and I think you can play it if you are inclined. This is a huge game for the conference, too. James Madison is trying to extend their lead and make the playoff. Not really for the conference championship, but James Madison's going to be likely battling Tulane for that final spot. They need some good wins and probably some style points to get there with Tulane ranked ahead of them. Missouri, Oklahoma. We took Missouri plus an 8.5. I missed the initial 9.5, but like them in this game. So far, Missouri's had a very good body of work. They lost their quarterback, both of them. So recently taken on a little bit of water. They lose to Vanderbilt in a close game, get annihilated by Texas A&M, but that was freshman Matt Zoller's first start. Other than that, they have a close loss to Alabama, and they should have won, 72% post-game win expectancy. Oklahoma just comes off the Alabama win. They had a 5% post-game win expectancy. Alabama nearly doubled them up in yards. Came down to 3 timely turnovers. Bama threw a pick 6. Had a field goal block, got strip sacked. Ty Simpson did. In a competitive game, that's how you lose. Bama with a 95% post-game win expectancy found a way to lose. Oklahoma's alive, man. Other than that, they have losses to Texas and Ole Miss, both rightful losses, so it's not all been pretty for OU. In this game, injury-wise, Bo Pribula is still probably going to miss. He's ahead of schedule on the ankle. It looks like he was running around warming up in their last game. Looked pretty good out there. There's a non-zero chance he plays. I don't think he plays, but it's at least possible. Oklahoma has a couple offensive line injuries. None of them are new. Mason Thomas didn't play in their last game, probably the biggest one to note. Let's start with Missouri's offense and Matt Zollers. He's expected to start. We'll see if Prebula can do enough. He's just clearly a freshman, hasn't played a ton, 50% completion percentage, 5.7 yards per attempt. One Big Ten throw, one turnover-worthy play, only 3 sacks, which is all right. Wide receivers haven't done him much help. They have a 10% drop rate on the year. They've dropped 4 of his passes already. They just need to help him more, man. And I think they can in the long term. Obviously, the run game's going to help them. They have a great offensive line. It's top 20 in the country. Every starter is above average. Your tackles might be the best duo in the conference. They're at least on that short list behind Caden Green and Keegan Trost. Not to mention Ahmad Hardy, 6.8 yards per carry. He's having an elite season. He's going to break 1,500 rushing yards, man. Your receivers, like Kevin Coleman's a good wide receiver 1. Donovan Olugbo, their freshman 4-star, has been emerging. Norfleet's a quality tight end. Clean up the drops in this unit should be better and help Zollers more. Oklahoma's defense is good, but they've still shown cracks. Ty Simpson and Joey Aguilar both bested this team. Michigan was able to run on them. They need Mason Thomas back, man. Taylor Wine had a good game, especially against Alabama. He was the cause of that strip sack. But when you have to play Marvin Jones, it's not pretty. Mason Thomas is electric. It would be a huge boost to get him back, especially you need someone to beat these tackles, man. They're excellent. Inside, it's hard to run on Oklahoma with David Stone and Grease and Halton. They've been consolidating snaps, too. We're not seeing as much Demonic Williams, who's been a real liability out there, which is good. It means Oklahoma's defensive line might be even a little better than we think, and we already think it's excellent. The coverage unit can be beat at times. A lot of this is just the pass rush gets home before that happens. So their coverage is 32nd. It's the path of least resistance, but it's still not a weakness for this team. I think Missouri can score. It's still just you're going to have to rely so much on Zollers at this point. It's hard to back, but ultimately the situation for him is just so good with the offensive line, the run game, and the receivers. It's hard to envision Missouri not having some success. Some. On the other side, John Mateer, it's been an okay season. The injury probably affected him more than he would tell you. He was having an excellent year before the injury. With that said, the schedule was very easy before that happened. So it's tough to attribute the struggles recently. Is it injury? Is it more difficult SEC play? The truth is it's probably a combination. 64% completion percentage for him, 7.1 yards per attempt, 9 Big Ten throws, 12 turnover-worthy plays, 17 sacks. Rushing output is down severely from his time at Washington State. The O-line's been pretty hurt. They've not found a solution at left guard. Heath Rosado was there for a bit, got hurt. Eddie Pierre-Louis been a disaster in his place. The one thing you can say is Michael Fasusi's been pretty good at left tackle. Their freshman continues to get better. Now, they need Derek Simmons back at right tackle, only got through a handful of snaps in their last game. His replacement, Ryan Fogy, another freshman, has been horrific. They need these guys back healthy in the lineup. Otherwise, they're just not good enough in the SEC. The skill players for this team are also lacking. They're 82nd in rushing efficiency. Part of that is Mateer regressing. Part of it is Blaylock and Robinson splitting a backfield with limited success. Isaiah Satina is really the only viable receiver. Purdue transfer Deion Burks, has wildly underachieved after getting way more hype than he deserved. Keontez Lewis only played a couple snaps in his return from injury. They seem to just be taking him slow and playing Giovanni Gibson, who's been a disaster. Jaron Canuck is like their third leading receiver, a tight end. The guy was playing defense last year. That's how you get 74th in receiving efficiency, 82nd in rushing. I just don't think they gave Mateer enough. So when they don't win these games with like defensive plays, turnovers, it's hard to see this offense really scoring with a lot of teams. And it's not like the sledding is going to get easier. I would argue Missouri's defense is better than Alabama's, especially up front. There's no question. Their defensive line is much better than Alabama's. The only 2 quarterbacks that had success against this team were Lenora Sellers and Marcel Reed. And even Reed, 7.6 yards per attempt. That's not crazy. Zion Young and Damon Wilson are awesome on the edge. They'll get after these young Oklahoma offensive linemen, especially if it's Fogy and they're not Simmons. Interior is very good with McClellan and Webb. Josiah Trotter's elite at linebacker. The main problem with this team has been lapses in coverage. They've continually rotated and cycled guys in their secondary. Toriano Pride and Jalen Catalan have both been kind of soft benched, but their replacements have struggled. They were kind of benched for like lapses in concentration. I sort of think they need to put those guys back out there. Stephen Hall's been a disaster in place of Pride. They still do have Dre Norwood and Marvin Burks who've been excellent, but I don't know, man. They've been really trying to find like the optimal secondary, and it hasn't worked. When guys make mistakes, they've been quick to pull the plug on them, and I don't think they should do that. They could be even better on defense. I think Missouri has an edge defensively against Oklahoma's offense that's been limited this year. A touchdown is just too many points right now, man. I think 7.5 is playable. Again, we have the 8.5. I have no issues with this number. We're going to back Missouri. Biggest hesitation would be the QB being young. But again, let's see what we get there. I'm interested at the very least. Zollers is a good recruit, too. He's not some complete stiff who's had to come in for them. Penn State takes on Nebraska. Game with not as much shine as it could have been, but it still comes out as one of the better ones this week. Penn State can still make a bowl. This team is 4-6. And they're 9.5-point favorites over Nebraska, who already is bowl eligible. The total is 44. Both teams have lost their QB. Most recently, we saw Nebraska beat UCLA before their bye. Prior to that, they lost to USC. It's been basically very close games across the board for Nebraska, even when they had Raiola. You have a 7-point win over Northwestern, lost to Minnesota, beat Maryland by a field goal, beat Michigan State by 11 points, lost to Michigan, should have lost to Cincinnati. It's been not pleasing to watch for Nebraska despite presumed success and a good record. Penn State's been kind of the opposite. They played a joke of a non-con, and since then, lose to Oregon, lose to UCLA, lose to Northwestern, coach gets fired, drop a game to Iowa by 1 point, and then you lose to Ohio State and Indiana before beating Michigan State last week, a quality win there. Kind of, I guess. A rightful win. Let's not say quality. So they can still make a bowl if they win out. Injury-wise, obviously, Drew Aller's done for the year. Dylan Raiola's done for the year for Nebraska. On the Penn State side, Tony Rojas has been hurt at linebacker. A.J. Harris at defensive back. For Nebraska, pretty injured on the offensive line. Tackles Teddy Prohaska and Gunnar Gatula were hurt. Vincent Shavers, he's back practicing. He's got a cast on. Same thing with Rocco Spindler on the offensive line. He's back. He's practicing with a cast. So I think they're going to have two players with casts on their hands. Quarterbacks. TJ Lateef had a good debut, man. 85% completion percentage, 13.7 yards per attempt, one big time throw, one turnover-worthy play. He has not taken a sack yet. The hole you're poking is sample. He has 34 attempts. In his start against UCLA, he only attempted 15 passes. Now he completed 13 of them. Lateef also has some rushing ability. The difference might just be he takes fewer sacks. He looks somewhat mobile, but Raiola has such like wild negative rushing numbers because of the sacks. It looks like Lateef is taking checkdowns and not sacks. We'll see how this plays out. I like the receivers, though. Nazai Hunter, Ja'Cory Barney, Dane Key. That's a reasonable receiving trio. I never thought this was on them. It was Raiola inability to process when pressure was coming to him. And this offensive line is 11th in pass blocking, 24th in run blocking. There was no excuse for Raiola taking all those sacks. Now, this unit's taken on water. You lose a couple tackles, so now you're starting Turner Kokorin and Elijah Pritchett. Both are reasonable. You got Spindler playing with a cast on, allegedly. We'll see how they do. The run game is excellent for this team. Emmett Johnson is shouldering an incredible workload. He is 1,131 yards, 31 catches. My goodness, man, this guy's been an absolute Iron Man. It's going to be tough against Penn State for everything they've struggled with. They have a good defense. Right now, they're 46th in run defense, 8th in pass rush, 39th in coverage. The only QB that blasted them was Julian Sand. That's going to happen. Against opposing rushing attacks, Iowa, Ohio State were above 5 yards per carry. That's tough. Oregon was at 4.5, so not struggles, kind of just occasional lapses. Those are good teams too, so I won't read too much into that. Danny Denise Sutton is an elite edge rusher. He's definitely going to test the backup tackles for Nebraska that are going to play in this game. The interior has been the problem with this team. They don't get a lot of interior pass rush. When they struggle against the run, they're the main problem. The linebackers, Dominic DeLuca and Amari Campbell, have not quite lived up to expectation. The ceiling comes with their secondary. Zakeem Wheatley, King Mack, Davian Collins have quietly been very, very successful in a lost season. They're kind of just wilting away on a team that no one's watching anymore. Overall, you get Penn State coming in 27th in defense. So I'm a lot more interested this week to see what Lateef is able to do against Penn State's defense, not UCLA's. On the other side, Ethan Grunkemeyer has played a little better recently. It should make sense that a young player of his recruitment is getting better. 64% completion, 6.2 yards per attempt, 3 big time throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays. 10 sacks is actually not too bad. Offensive line's pretty good for this team. I would argue they didn't reach their ceiling this year, but there's still a strength. Nolan Rucci, Vega, Ione are pretty good on the offensive line. They don't really have a definitive weakness there. So 21st in pass blocking, 30th in run blocking. The run game is good, especially with Katron Allen. He was running laps around Nick Singleton early in the season, but we've now seen Singleton break out a little bit, especially in their receiving game. The biggest concern with this team is how did they not get more out of these receivers? You go out, you add 3 premier transfers. Trevor Pena, he's at 369 yards. Devontae Ross, he's at 360. Kyron Hudson from USC is at 245. They don't even have 1,000 yards combined. What? This is the biggest disappointment in the nation? Like, probably. They're 109th in receiving efficiency. What the hell happened with this team? Nebraska's defense has been suspect. I will say they did hold Jaden Maeva a little bit. They haven't really faced a good slate of QBs. You play Sorsby in week 1. They did a good job against him. You play Maeva, and who else have they really played? If you look at the opposing schedule for Nebraska, you've got Iamaleava, Preston Stone, Drake Lindsey, Malik Washington, Michigan State's tandem of QBs, like Bryce Underwood early in the season. They just haven't really been tested, man. And on the ground, they've allowed at least 5 yards per carry in 3 of their last 4 games. The edge group is a little better than the interior. The interior is horrific for this Nebraska team. But even that, like Dasan McCullough on the edge missed their last game. He would be a huge loss for them. He's one of their better players. Linebackers have been solid, but it's not enough to overcome the interior problems. Marcus Watson, Trent, and Javin Wright. The secondary is very good, but Penn State's going to try to run the ball on this team. That's the path of least resistance. That's Penn State's strength. I don't even think you really need to test Deshaun Wright or Deshaun Singleton or Sayer Wright on the back end. You probably are just able to run the ball down this team's throat. With all that said, it's a lot of points in this game. Happy Valley is a tough place to play. I lean Nebraska plus 9.5, especially mathematically. On paper, these teams are closer talent-wise than that number would indicate. And Latif is interesting. I'm now realizing on the graphic, excuse me for this, I have the sides flipped. So generally, we do the home team on the right. We do the away team on the left. Penn State is the home team in this game. So excuse me for flipping the graphic. I don't know how I did that accidentally, but Penn State is the home team in this contest. That is a huge advantage for them. Otherwise, a lot of things point to Nebraska maybe being a little closer to Penn State efficiency-wise than the spread would indicate. We're probably going to stay away from this one. Lot of volatility with 2 backup quarterbacks. We'll see. But that'll do it for us today. If you have requests later in the week, please let me know. We'll be back to discuss it all. But until then, good luck, everyone. We will see you again next time.